Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Wednesday afternoon, and we get some sneaky but very intriguing news coming out of USC during their first day of fall camp. Adrian Klemm showing up on the sidelines of fall camp, and then the reports start coming out. USC is going to be hiring Adrian Klemm as an analyst for this program going into 2025. Now, look, am I getting up here and potentially overreacting to an analyst hire for USC? Yeah, maybe, probably. But what fires me up the most is one, Adrian Klemm is a very decorated coach, monsterly overqualified for being an analyst at the college football level. But before we get into Adrian Klemm, this is what I want to focus on. I mean, USC, Lincoln Riley and USC would get up there 2 or 3 years ago and talk about maximizing USC, maximizing this program, a program that we all know has massive potential. Although he said that a lot in front of a microphone, you never really saw the actions getting take place with the coaching staff when it came to talent acquisition. I mean, 2 years ago, USC was nowhere near what it needed to look like from a talent acquisition standpoint, was certainly nowhere near what it came to what it needed to look at from a coaching standpoint. You fast forward to where we are sitting here at the end of July, it's been completely flipped on its head. This USC team is not only getting in front of us and telling us they want to maximize this program, they're showing it. They're showing it as well with their actions. The recruiting class they're bringing in 2026, but just as importantly, the coaching staff that they are building at USC too. It is becoming one of, if not the best coaching staffs that you see in the country. And I'm just going to say it like this. When you get talent acquisition right, when you get a lot of talent coming into your program, and then you supplement that with some of the best coaches in the sport, that's the recipe. That's the recipe to winning national championships. And that is what USC is doing. They're showing us with their actions that they are committed to maximizing this program. And I'll just say this as well. This ain't a program like Minnesota. Probably an unnecessary ricochet shot at a program like Minnesota. I think PJ Fleck does a great job, but we all know that this USC program, when it's maximized, looks a little bit different from a lot of other programs that you see across the country. These kind of hires, it shows you that USC is dedicating to maximizing and unlocking the potential this program has over the next 5 to 10 years. That's what fires me up the most. That's why I'm overreacting a little bit to an analyst hire here. Now, I want to start with Adrian Klemm, what he brings to the table, because there's a couple interesting talking points. And look, you're going to have to get used to him because obviously with UCLA and then with Oregon as well, a little bit funky seeing him have that USC logo on his chest. But I'll say this, really decorated football coach that brings a lot to this USC program. And talk about a few other things I got to get off my chest before we get into it. As always, the USC fans, especially to many of y'all who are clicking on this episode as we talk about an analyst hire. It's been so fun talking this program. Any chance I get to talk this program, I certainly will be. And a large part of it has to do with the amount of support that y'all have shown the boys throughout the last couple of months, and in some cases the last couple of years. We can't thank you guys enough. Y'all do enjoy the content. Consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's start with Adrian Klemm. For those who maybe are not all that familiar with Adrian Klemm, this is one 3-time Super Bowl winning champ as a football player with the New England Patriots. That's one thing I'm monitoring. The amount of Super Bowl rings that we have on this USC coaching staff between Coach Henny, a guy like Adrian Klemm, it's a lot. Number two, as a really decorated offensive line coach. He's been an NFL offensive line coach both at the Patriots and at the Steelers. Was the offensive line coach for Oregon, was a longtime offensive line coach for UCLA. This is a guy that is much more qualified than as a football coach than being an analyst at USC. Heck, if USC hired him as an offensive line coach, I think it's a pretty dang good hire because of the track record and how decorated he is as a football coach. Now, it's kind of interesting because his role, it sounds like, is going to be on the defensive side of the football. Now, he has an offensive background, little self-scouting. Look, the way I look at it is this is a really good football mind. Having him in the program within the walls of the building, it's only a positive for USC going into 2025. And here's the last thing I'll say: has shown us that he can be a really good recruiter as well, especially along the West Coast. He's from the state of California. Recruited guys like Josh Connerly and Poncho to Oregon during his time up in Eugene. He's shown us that he can be a weapon on the recruiting trail, especially in the state of California. And so not only are you adding a really good football mind, a guy that's been around the sport and has won at a very high level, but you're also adding a guy that can be a quiet weapon for USC on the recruiting trail as well. This is really the Nick Saban method when it comes down to it. Like Nick Saban, look, I ain't going to get up here and say Nick Saban wasn't a good football coach, was a very, very good football coach, especially as a guy running a program, and what he did on the defensive side of the football in a lot of ways revolutionized the sport on defense. What made Nick Saban the GOAT, what made him great, was the staff that he hired around him at Alabama. Like, if you have some time, just go look at some of the Alabama coaching staffs. When Alabama was at the height of their powers, yes, they were recruiting very well. They had a very, very good football coach as their head guy, Nick Saban. But that staff, the staff was routinely the best in the country. It was absolutely loaded. That is a large part of why I believe Nick Saban was so successful at Alabama. He was a really good football coach, but one thing really good football coaches do, they surround themselves with a lot of really good football coaches as well. That is what Lincoln Riley is trying to do. I mean, look at the coaching staff that USC has built. I mean, 2 years ago, I considered USC, especially on the defensive side of the football, to be one of the worst coach teams in the country. Obviously we don't have to mention it, but the Alex Grinch days looked lost. The player development was a disaster, was not recruiting the way it needed to be. Now you look at Dan Lynn. He's a comfortable top 5 defensive coordinator in the sport. You could argue he's the best defensive coordinator in the sport, probably going to be a head coach in the next 5 years. You go get Rob Ryan coaching your linebackers, was an NFL defensive coordinator, guy that's been coaching for 40 years, whether at the collegiate or NFL ranks, very well and highly regarded as a defensive mind. You look at Coach Henney on the defensive line, like Super Bowl winning coach on the defensive line. You're looking, and I'm forgetting some guys, Sean Nua, Doug Belk. It's a very, very strong coaching staff, top to bottom. Even with the analysts, like guys like Adrian Klemm. That's what Nick Saban did. And it's what allowed Nick Saban to have so much success. Now I look at USC and saying, hey, we're trying to replicate it. But once again, showing us the dedication that this program has to maximizing this program. Hey, we are going to lift every single rock and look underneath it for ways to enhance this USC football team. Last thing, total buy-in from the program. It kind of has what we just talked about for the last 8 minutes. I mean, whether it's talent acquisition, whether it's NIL, whether it's coaching staff, whether it's facilities that they're building, they are doing everything possible to completely maximize this USC football team and USC football program. That's what matters. It's one thing for a lot of these coaches to come up there and talk about what their programs look like if they're maximized and reaching their full potential. Heck, Lincoln Riley would spend a lot of time talking about it, and his actions never lined up with it. The last 6 months, bringing in Chad Bowden, retaining a defensive coordinator like Dan Lynn, bringing in Rob Ryan to coach your linebackers, it is very clear from a coaching staff standpoint, from a facility standpoint, from a talent acquisition standpoint, USC is doing everything possible at all levels of this program to maximize what USC can be. And again, to finish this one out, we all know, because we've seen USC when it's figured out, when it's maximized, when it's all systems go, there's not many programs that can match the firepower that USC has, but you needed a coaching staff, you needed administration that were all aligned, that were dedicated to maximizing it. That's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing at USC right now. Yes, a little bit. Am I a little too excited about an analyst getting hired? Sure, maybe. I think it should fire up a lot of USC fans because it's indicative of the process that USC is following to get the best out of this program. The best out of this program is national championships. We'll cut it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Hey, we're going to find ways to talk about USC until 2025 comes around. A lot of really fun fall camp storylines to monitor as well. Appreciate y'all rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.